Welcome to the video, guys and girls. My name is Anbraxas, World of Warcraft Mist of Pandaria. Today we're going to be going over my tips and tricks for Prot Warrior flag carrying. Although it's not going to be necessarily a tips and tricks video, it's more going to be a compendium on how to Prot Warrior flag carry. So, here in a second, a menu is going to pop up with skip annotations to any part of the video that you find interesting. More experienced players may want to skip to different parts of the videos to pick up the tips and tricks. Other players may want to watch the video the whole way through. You'll be able to access this menu at any time by hitting the back button located in the upper left corner of the video. Okay, so you want to gear up a Prot Warrior flag carrier. That's good. There's a few things we need to talk about as far as gear, itemization, enchants, reforges, etc. First thing we need to talk about is the gear itself. You really want to go ahead and set yourself up with as much conquest gear as you can. If you're starting a new flag carrier, my suggestion would be while you're gearing him up with honor gear, go ahead and do your arenas every week. Hopefully you'll have 5 or 6 pieces by the time you get all of your honor gear done. Now, it's going to be hard for you to find a team if you're still wearing honor gear. So here's my suggestion to you. If you want to start rated battlegrounds and you aren't fully conquest geared, go ahead and take the time to upgrade every single piece of your honor gear so it's the best that it can possibly be. This is also going to limit you as far as your roles switching back and forth between DPS and Prot Warrior. Personally, I don't do it anymore. I stay Prot no matter what map we're on. There's always something useful you can do. Next thing we're going to be talking about are your gems. Everything except for your meta socket should be resilience. You want to put resilience in every single slot, and I don't want to go into it in this video, but resilience is always better than stacking stamina or any other stat, or even taking the socket bonuses, because you'll always gain more resilience by just putting resilience in every single socket. Now, as far as the meta gems are concerned, there's a number of different things you can do. I only see 2 options, but for the sake of argument, I'm going to include all 3. Meta gems have the requirement removed to have different colored gems in your gear, so you don't have to worry about that anymore, and you're perfectly fine to stack resilience. But when it comes to the meta gem itself, you have to make a choice. Personally, for me, I have in my head slot reduce spell damage by 2% meta gem. It gives me stamina and reduces spell damage by 2%. I took this personally because most teams tend to have more casters than they do melee DPS. Although there is another gem to consider now that they've made the change to Avatar, which Avatar used to grant us movement impairing immunity for 20 seconds and no longer does that. The other meta gem that you could take into consideration is a meta gem that gives you stamina and reduces roots and snares by 10%. And then the third gem, which I don't really see as an option, but I suppose some people could, is a gem that gives you strength and reduces fear duration by 10%. Or 5%. I can't remember which one it was, but it reduces fear duration. Personally, I think that's a very poor choice for rated battlegrounds. Prot Warriors don't tend to find themselves feared because fear breaks on any damage. So that's that, and that covers your gems. Next, we're going into enchants. So the first enchant I'm going to talk about, as I move down the left side of the gear to the right, is the shoulder enchant. Now, there are DPS enchants, and if you have to make the switch between a DPS and a tank, it may work out for you to go ahead and take your strength crit enchant. However, if you're Prot Warrior flag carrying seriously, and that's all you plan on doing, the enchant that gives you 300 stamina and 100 dodge is way more important than something that gives you strength. Now, unfortunately, there just aren't any resilience enchants for the shoulders right now. There may be later in the expansion, but for now, we're stuck with PvE enchants. The 300 stamina gives me more hit points for my resilience to protect, so I took that, and the 100 dodge, while not incredibly important for PvP, is better than having nothing there at all. The next enchant we'll be talking about is your back enchant. Now, currently I have this enchanted for 200 stamina. There is an armor enchant that you can use. However, I decided to go with stamina personally, because again, it gives me more health points for my resilience to protect. You could very well go with the armor enchant, however, you need to keep in mind it will only affect melee classes hitting you, versus the stamina being affected by every single class. Moving down the list, we move to our chest. This is a no-brainer decision. As I said before, PvP Resilience is the best choice no matter what. If you can put Resilience in an item, you want to do it. So, 200 PvP Resilience to chest. Moving down the list, I have my bracers enchanted with more PvE stats. I have it enchanted with plus 170 dodge. And that's because I was trying a small experiment. There should be a mastery enchant that would be more appropriate for you to take. And if you can find that for cheap on your server, which it happens to be very, very expensive on mine because of all tanks in PvE need this enchant, you can go ahead and go with the dodge. So I have 170 dodge to bracers. Moving over to the right side of the character pane, we're looking at the gloves. For the gloves, I went ahead and enchanted strength, because I actually use these gloves. If I ever do have to switch over to DPS spec, the gloves stay the same, so I continue to use strength enchants on the gloves. I do not swap them out for honor gear. As far as the belt's concerned, there aren't any enchants, but go ahead and pick up your belt buckle, get your socket bonus, and put in another resilience gem. As far as pants are concerned, again, I went with a PvE enchant because they have no resilience enchants for legs. And that enchant would be 430 stamina and 165 dodge to legs. Moving on to boots, I have my boots enchanted for plus 140 mastery and minor speed increase. Now this is actually important because the minor speed increase makes it entirely worthwhile to pick up this enchant to start with. While there could be an enchant that I could pick up that could give me more stats in either direction, the minor speed increase will help you keep up with your paladin your paladin healer, who already has a flat movement speed increase over you anyway. And as far as rings are concerned, there aren't any enchants you can pick up for PvP. As far as your weapons are concerned, the main hand weapon, go ahead and enchant it with Colossus. Out of all the enchants, this is probably the best one. When Colossus triggers, it gives you an 8,000 damage absorb shield, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but because it goes on an RPPM? Real prop per minute, yes, RPPM. Real prop per minute system, the longer you're in combat, the more times this is triggered. And you'd be surprised once you go into the actual charts, if you have recount or something at the end of the match, you'll see that this enchant, over the course of an entire rated battleground, if you're in constant combat, I'm saying, not if you're just waiting on stacks, but if you're in constant combat, this enchant will actually prevent roughly 2 million damage being done to you by itself. And as far as the shield's concerned, there really isn't a whole lot you can do here. It could be argued that there is a very, very old enchant from Burning Crusade that has some resilience that you can put on your shield. And it also reduces disarm duration, but because we have the set bonus that reduces disarm duration, you may as well go ahead and throw on a spike. I just put a Ghost Iron spike on my shield. That's the best thing I knew what to do with it. So that about covers it as far as itemization. Let's go into the reforging. What are you looking at as far as reforging? So talking about reforges, my number one suggestion, go out and pick up Reforge Lite. It's a great add-on. You can find it on Curse. Currently it's out of date, but still functions in the game. So when you go over to your Reforger with this add-on, what you want to do is you want to look at stat weights in the upper right corner of the add-on. Go to Presets, Protection Avoidance, and you'll see the stats are a little bit jumbled up. What you want to do is move your hit and expertise all the way up to the first two priority slots. And it will take into account when it calculates which ones have priority. So it should go hit, expertise, mastery, dodge, parry, and haste. After that, hit calculate. You'll see a bunch of numbers show up green. All you have to do is scroll down, hit show, then hit reforge. It's the most efficient way to reforge. It'll make sure you get as close as humanly possible to your hit cap without going over it. It's a great add-on. I highly suggest that. Okay, so now that we got the gear situation handled, I just wanted to talk very briefly on the talents, and only the level 90 talents, which would be Avatar. Avatar is no longer good for flag carriers, so go ahead and pick up Stormbolt. You'll still be able to use that as a long-range stun. Stuns for 3 seconds. It can also be used as a spell interrupt if you absolutely need it to. Now, talking about defending a node, as a Prot Warrior flag carrier, your primary objective is to hold down nodes, primarily Blacksmith, because that's where you'll almost always be sent. Now, your only job is to stare at the flag and make sure that no one caps on it. And you don't only want to be active when someone's trying to cap on it, because it only takes 7 seconds to capture a flag. So if you miss the first 1.5 to 2 seconds, and you get caught in a long duration crowd control, you will lose that cap. And as a Prot Warrior flag carrier, there's almost no reason to ever be capped on. If there's a second person there, you should never be capped on unless the other person dies and you get caught in a crowd control chain. However, in a group fight, chances are you're not going to be in a CC long enough, because most crowd controls diminishing return with each other long before they're actually going for a cap. Now, it's very hard for someone to cap on a Prot Warrior flag carrier if you cycle your abilities appropriately. And those abilities primarily should be Cleave and Thunderclap. These two abilities alone should give you the edge and keep people from capping. However, if it's not enough, you also have your Shockwave and Intimidating Shout to use at any time. If you cycle these abilities about 5 seconds apart, it should be nearly impossible, even for a group fight, for anyone to cap on you. Now, what you want to keep in mind, though, is that a lot of teams will send what they call a sap cap team, back when rogues were big in raid battlegrounds. Basically, a sap cap team will be 2 people who can go invisible. You will see one pop up and start to cap, and you will try to interrupt that person. Now, sometimes they'll open with a CC, sometimes they won't. If they do open with a crowd control effect, typically if it's a mage or any other class that isn't a rogue, it's going to be a magic ability, which can be spell reflected. So you want to do your best to spell reflect that first ability. However, because sap cap teams are usually 2 people, what you need to be very mindful of is the second person, and almost 90% of the time is going to be a druid or some other caster class. One of the classes, most likely, will be a caster. Now, it takes 7 seconds to capture a flag, and as long as you have that in mind, you'll be fine. Because a deep freeze from a mage only lasts, I think, 4 seconds, and then a cyclone will last for 6. As long as you trinket the cyclone the second it hits you, you will still have 1 full second to interrupt whoever tried to cap the flag first, and at that point, they cannot cap on you because all of their crowd control abilities are on diminishing return. So, for a quick tip and trick, I've already talked about how hard it is to capture on a Prot Warrior flag carrier. And really, the only way to do it effectively is to pull the flag carrier away from the flag, which Death Knights excel at doing, and so do Elemental Shamans, although you hardly ever see them. However, if you find yourself pulled away from the flag and rooted to the ground, keep in mind that you still have the ability to throw your weapon at the enemy. You can either use your Heroic Throw to interrupt them once, or use your regular throw, which is on a half-second cooldown and cannot be interrupted. You'll be out of that route long before they figure out how to stop you from throwing. Another quick tip is that if you're guarding farm in a raided battleground situation, there are small rat critters running around. Now, you can't kill them, they can't hurt you. However, you can taunt them to stay in combat the entire time, which makes it impossible for a rogue to sap you. So there's one more thing I wanted to add on to how to guard a node, and that's using your battleground target add-on appropriately. And what you're always going to want to be looking for are stealth classes going invisible and not showing up for more than 15 to 20 seconds. Chances are they're on their way to try to cap on you. Also, if you see a single lone person coming over to your base, chances are there's someone else there with them. Check and make sure there's no one invisible. So here's another quick tip and trick. This is one of my favorite spots to stand if I'm guarding Fel Reaver. There's also a similar spot to this at the Drunai Ruins. It's far enough from the flag that it can't be sap capped on. It's far enough from the capture node that if I'm holding the flag from the middle, a Death Knight can't grip me on to the capture point and steal the flag back. It also allows me full view of Mage Tower, Drunai Ruins, Blood Elf Tower, both bridges, and the middle just by turning my camera left and right, and I don't have to move from this position. It also makes it very hard for anyone to crowd control you, because they can't crowd control you and get back to the flag fast enough to actually cap it. So here's some tips and tricks for the Temple of Kathmandu. Typically what my team does is we'll send myself to pick up an orb, and someone that's fast, like a druid, to pick up the other orb. And what we'll do is I'll pick up the purple orb, I'll heroic leap to the middle, and pass the green orb, and what we'll do is we'll switch the positions of these two orbs, and then we'll each hide in these little nooks with our healers standing in front of us. Basically what it does is it line of sights everybody, and the enemy literally has to come within your field of view to be able to attack you. And even if they do get the orb off of you and they make you drop it, it then crosses to the other side of the map and they have to go get it over there. Here's another popular spot I like to sit in the Temple of Kathmandu. It's right here in the middle, in this little nook. The pillar actually hides the color cone above your head quite well. And if this warrior hadn't seen me, I could almost guarantee you that I would have sat there for almost 2 to 3 minutes before anyone had noticed I was there. A, it's very hard to see the orbs. B, your line of sight, so they have to come on this side of the arena to even see you. You can't be attacked from above, and you can't be attacked from the opposite ledge. They have to be in the middle to hit you, which makes it a very good spot to be in. And along with cooldowns, healers, and everything else, you should be able to rack up an easy 200 to 300 points before someone takes you down for the first time. However, that's dependent on the teams you're facing. Okay, welcome to the Prop Warriors tips and tricks for flag carrying portion of this video. Probably the number one reason why you're here. What is the difference between a good and a bad flag carrier? A bad flag carrier holds the flag. A good flag carrier holds the flag and helps out his team. Rated battlegrounds are made up of 10 people on each side. And if just one of those are just standing around holding the flag, that means it's a 9-on-9 fight. It should be a 10-on-10 fight. And to be completely honest, I see too many flag carriers just standing in the back, running around in circles. There's a lot you can contribute to your team, and I'm going to tell you how. Number one thing you can contribute to your team is your positioning. You always want to be within range of your healer. As a flag carrier, that's one of your number one priorities. Even if you think you can get a cap, if there's enemies in the tunnel and you're running away, you stay within range of your healer. The enemy may pick up the flag, but at least you still have a chance because you didn't die. Now, the typical setup in a group fight in the middle is you're going to pick up the flag and you're going to make your way back. You want to avoid the enemy team at all costs, and you want to get to the back of your group. And typically where you want to stand is about 20 yards behind your healers. The main group will be at almost max range in front of the healers will be in the middle, and you want to be behind them. However, as long as you're not over 3 stacks, you may as well help out your group any way you can. And there's actually a lot you can do to help out your group. One of the number one things I can suggest, as long as you're below 3 stacks, is to run up into the back of your group periodically when these abilities come off cooldown and give them mass spell reflection and throw out a storm bolt on a healer, or on an enemy healer. You won't believe how many times I've seen mass spell reflect, a hex, a cyclone, a chaos bolt, a deep freeze, all kinds of nasty things that could have really messed up one of your healers. I've seen mass spell reflect help out more than it's ever hurt. Even in situations where I've run forward and got death gripped into the enemy bait or the enemy team, I've been able to heroic leap out. As long as you're below 3 stacks. If you have more than 3 stacks, I would highly suggest you not do that. Only save the mass spell reflect for yourself and the healers. There's also a number of different things that you should have on your character and have on your toolbar. One of those things is going to be your rallying cry. Your rallying cry will give your entire team 20% maximum health for 12 seconds. You'll also have last stand for yourself, and they share separate cooldowns, so keep that in mind. One of the other things you can do to help out your team is having a horde battle standard. Drop that anytime people are starting to get low. That'll give your team another 20% health to play with. The last thing I want to talk about as far as helping your team out are all the banners that you have. Your war banner system is actually immensely helpful for group fights. While the mocking banner is a little bit crappy, to be completely honest. You can use it to taunt hunter pets and mage pets as long as it's placed close enough to them. So every single banner is actually on its own cooldown. You can throw down your mocking, demoralizing, and skull banner all within a minute of each other if you need to. Now, say the group's taking a lot of damage. Go ahead and throw down your demoralizing banner right in the middle of them. They'll take 10% reduced damage for its entire duration while the demoralizing banner is up. Say your target caller's having a hard time getting targets down. Feel free to drop your skull banner. It doesn't need to benefit you, it needs to benefit the team. And being able to get 20% extra damage on a crit is a pretty big deal, so go ahead and do that and help out your team. My only other suggestion would be learn to communicate. Communication is the #1 thing that you can do in a rated battleground. And you don't have to say a whole lot. Just make sure that everyone knows exactly what you're doing, what you have available, and where you are. For example, say that I picked up the flag. I would check with my dedicated healer, which is usually the paladin. I would say, coming out tunnel, is tunnel clear? He would say no. I'd say, okay, coming out ramp, meet me there. I would then meet him at the ramp, and we'd proceed back to the group. You always want to make sure that your healer knows what cooldowns you have available. And it can be as simple as saying, shield wall's down 1 minute, shield wall's down 30 seconds, 15 till shield wall, I have shield wall available. Stuff like that makes all the difference in the world. It lets him know, does he need to give you his lay on hands? What does he have to do? How many healers need to be targeting you? Another thing is, your team needs to communicate with you. Say you've gone back to try to cap the flag, and they didn't get the kill on the flag carrier. Your team needs to be communicating to you how many people are coming to attack you, where they're coming from, and you need to make the decision yourself. Do I go back to the graveyard, or do I stand here and try to cap? Most times you'll end up going back to the graveyard. But that's primarily the difference between being a good and a bad flag carrier. I think that's all the tips and tricks I really have for you right now. I would give you some tips and tricks for Silver Sharp Mine, but to be completely honest, that map's a total disaster. Anyhow, this has been Anbraxas. I hope this guy's helped you out, and I will catch you later.